Please.
Taoiseach, as I speak, retained firefighters are on strike. Rolling work stoppages will see half of fire stations in the service shut, and this will be followed by an all-out strike action next week outside of emergency calls. The strike is unprecedented and it certainly has not been undertaken lightly. Retained firefighters have been pushed to the very brink by government, and they feel that they've been left with no choice. They are the very best of our communities. They do their jobs under incredibly difficult circumstances, acting as first responders at scenes that most of us could never even imagine, saving lives, often putting their own lives on the line. Their work is essential, it's highly skilled, it's life-saving, and it is totally undervalued by this government. So retired firefighters are at their wits' end. They're on call 24/7, 50 weeks of the year. They're underpaid, overstretched, and feel totally let down. For years, they've urged government to deliver a proper plan to ensure that they have safe working conditions and fair pay. But government has buried its head in the sand. Fire services should be a basic public service that communities can rely on, not an optional luxury. But years of underinvestment and failure to plan by government have seen these services run into the ground, and there is now clearly a recruitment and a retention crisis. Staff shortages are worryingly common, and unions warn that staff levels are often dangerously low. Indeed, some fire authorities have been forced to temporarily close stations due to unsafe staffing levels. And there is a real risk that all of this could get even worse. Government's most recent review revealed that 58% of current retained firefighters warned they were likely to leave the service within the next 3 years, forced to give up a job they love because they cannot continue. Negotiations with the firefighters' representatives have been insufficient and in any event have broken down. So, tá service dóchon atá von fort aimsere faoi bhrú. Níl an dara rawa acu ach dul stalc. Na mblianta gan inestiacht ceart agus ceannaracht lag ón Oireachtas, ní mór ag an Oireachtas plan sin féin a chur I bhaim agus a cinsiú go bhain an Fiann Seirbhís dóiteáin an Pá Corrum agus na cinsiú ibre sábháilte atá á lorg acu. So Sinn Féin have brought forward solutions to resolve this matter, and tonight, Taoiseach, our proposals come before the Dáil. Our plan urges government to engage in proper good faith negotiations with representatives of the retained firefighters to address their concerns without delay and to prevent any further escalation of industrial action. And this needs to happen urgently. Our plan empowers government to bring forward a financial investment package to ensure the service gets the funding and the resourcing that it needs. And this would allow for the creation of a system with safe staffing levels. So, Taoiseach, I want to ask you, will you stand with our firefighters? Will you back Sinn Féin's plan to support the retained fire services? And will you support our motion tonight?
Thanks very much, Deputy. Just at the outset, I wanted on behalf of the Government to express our shock and our horror at the events in Nottingham today. We don't know the details yet. Only a certain amount of information is available, but it's clear that there have been fatalities and a number of injuries. And we extend our condolences to those who have had loved ones or friends killed, and our best wishes to those who've been injured for a speedy recovery. And we'll be in touch with the British authorities today to offer any assistance we can give, and of course our solidarity. In relation to the matter that the Deputy raises, I just wanted to say that the Government values the work of our retained firefighters. They're highly committed frontline responders, providing an exceptional service in their communities across the state. And we know that their terms and conditions need to improve, and we're committed to making that happen. And the Government has been working on this issue for a number of months now. There have been negotiations and significant progress has been made, with the proposal made to the union SIP2, which included a 20% increase in staffing and elements of rebalancing of pay with structured time off and more flexible working arrangements. This would all fall within the scope of building momentum. This is the public sector pay agreement that both unions and government are committed to, and both sides must honour. So I do hope that the two sides can re-engage to resolve the dispute. The offices of the government are available to intervene. The Workplace Relations Commission would be the first port of call in that regard. My message to the public is that emergency contingencies are in place and that any emergency calls with respect to fire will be answered to. In Tíam Leat Oireachtas, tá an service dóta an Freebrú, in Tíam Leat, agus beg an feib sin a réitú, a cahamid bheith ag caint le céile arís, agus tá ifig an stát fáil mar hampla an WRC chun bheith ag caint arís.
Mary McDonald.
Thank you, Taoiseach. As you well know, the discussions broke down on May the 11th. You know and you have acknowledged that the firefighters, retained firefighters, are indeed under pressure. As I said earlier, they're on call 24/7. They can't, in fact, move further than a radius of 2.5 kilometres without sanction. So they make very considerable personal sacrifices, and their retainer, their fixed fee, fixed salary, starts at the huge sum of €8,500 per annum. Like, there has to be movement on that, Taoiseach, and I think you have to bring more than hope to the table, or more than passing the buck. I think it's absolutely essential that there's meaningful engagement here. There can be no further delay. I know that the Minister's Department has had some limited contact now with union representatives, with Taoiseach. We need to see that stepped up. Positive comments that might be made here on the floor of the Dáil are all well and good, but what we need is a proper, realistic offer that rewards these essential frontline workers for the life-saving tasks that they undertake. So I agree with you in terms of getting back around the negotiating table, but can I ask, what will you concretely do as head of government to make sure that good faith negotiations resume without further delay?
Taoiseach.
Deputy, just back in January, Minister Bryan brought an independent report to Cabinet on the retained fire service, and we accepted the recommendations of that report. Negotiations were ongoing up until a few weeks ago, and a third-party negotiator, Mr Ulton Courtney, was appointed to chair those talks. An offer was made which would involve a 20% increase in staffing with the minimum of 12 firefighters in all fire stations, structured time off, recognising the need for proper work-life balance, individual flexibility with regard to availability, 50 additional promotional positions, and also flexibility to attend calls when scheduled on leave if desired. There is an outstanding issue, and that relates to core pay, and the difficulty that arises is that we have an agreement with the trade unions as a whole on public sector pay. It's called Building Momentum, and we're going to honour that agreement. And it's only reasonable that we should expect the union side to honour that agreement as well. But there is room for talks, there is room for compromise, there is the capacity for intervention, and the offer is there to allow talks to resume, and to do so under the offices of the WRC, which is the government body that intervenes in disputes such as this.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Holly.